With that, let's do a little navigation. So I'm going to go ahead and start CCW at this point. It's actually already open. So we'll select, two things that I want to show you. These are really beneficial when you're programming in CCW that you need to do up front. So one of them is when you're looking at the ladder logic on the screen, and I don't want to bring it up yet, but when you're looking at the ladder logic on the screen, you are basically, your tag names can be up to 25 characters long. If you exceed 25 characters, then what it does is it will show you the beginning of your tag name, the end of your tag name, and then it will truncate the center of the tag name. So if you have important information in the center, which maybe is a distinguishing factor between a bunch of different tag names, you're not going to see that. One way to take care of that is to go to Tools, and then go to Options. And this is going to be the area that you can actually customize CCW with colors and fonts and all kinds of different things. But what we're interested in, if you want to increase that, what they call the cell width, so you can see more of your tag name, is the IEC languages. And then we go to ladder diagram. And it brings you up, brings up all the properties for the ladder diagram editor. And we're going to scroll up here to cell width. That is set when you do the install, that is set for 25. I would suggest you increase that to 30 or 35. That's going to allow you to read more of your tag name if you use long tag names. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is really important, is your theme for CCW will be set to default. One of the vast improvements that took place at version 11.5 is they made the ladder editor in CCW very much like an RS Logix product, whether it was 5000, Logix Designer, 5 or 500. They gave you the instruction set across the top, gave you the folders so that your instructions are actually put together, in the same grouping. So that's really important to remember to change that theme Logix. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to leave the default name. I hit new here, and we're just going to hit create. And so as you can see, there's several different types of devices that you can select from if you're going to create a project. So we got the PowerFlex drives, motor starters, safety relays, and the panel view 800s. So a lot of different components there. But what we're interested in is the Micro850, and specifically, if you'll notice, there is a SIM version of the Micro850, which is what we're going to select because, as I said earlier, we are going to actually use the simulator, play with it a little bit, and show you guys how that works. And that's wonderful simply because if I don't have the hardware there, I can download the software, install it, start writing logic, and I can test that logic without having to have any hardware. So kind of a really cool feature that came out very recently with CCW. If you are going to eventually use the Micro8 10, 20, 30, or 70, it's not a big deal to start with the Micro850 simulator. Once you're done simulating all of your code, you can go ahead and change the part number to the correct number that you actually have the hardware for, and you're good to go at that point. So we're going to hit select. And then lastly, we're going to go to add project. And so what you're looking at now is the home page for the Micro850. Eric's going to talk a little bit more about this. For instance, assigning the IP address under the Ethernet ports. If you have additional I/O modules, whether they're plugins or expansion modules, this is where you actually configure those. So this is the overview. This is also where you go to upload and download your program. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just get started. I'm going to come over here and select programs. I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to add new ladder diagram. And it goes ahead and it adds it, and it calls it prog1. I'm going to go ahead and rename it. So instead of prog1, we're going to call it main Now we have our main program, and it's a simple structure. It's not like 5000, which has tasks, routines, programs, things like that. You've got the main program folder, and then you've got just programs underneath there. You can mix and match, so I could actually add a function block version of a program or structured text, whatever I wanted to do there. We're just going to add a second ladder. I'm going to call this, rename it auto mode. So we got that. So I'm going to click into main, and we're going to actually get started writing a little code. So you see the ladder editor. This was, like I said, one of the big changes that made it really nice. So we have our folders. I can click across there. They keep on going, and then I have the instructions that are above that. Very much like any of the RS Logic products that you've potentially used in the past. So I'm going to do a very simple seal-in circuit, motor starter type circuit, just to kind of get started. I grabbed the instruction there, and once you land the instruction in the ROM, it automatically brings up the variable selector. So you've got global variables, local variables, system variables, which are like internal tags, and then you have the actual inputs and outputs. So we're going to be using the simulator, which allows me to manipulate inputs and based on the code, change the outputs. So I'm actually going to use inputs here for this seal-in circuit. So a bit on the syntax of the Micro800, or Micro800 I/O structure. So you can see we're looking at DOs for distributed outputs. I'm going to resort this by clicking on name. And so the syntax for an input is simply IO, and then EM for embedded, and then you've got DI for digital input, and then you've got the sequence of 0 through, let's see, what is this, 28, I think? Or yeah, 20, so a total of 28, right? So that is the basic syntax of how you're addressing inputs and outputs on the controller itself. So I'm going to give it an alias name, and we're just going to start, use a start push button. And then I can give it a comment over here. I want to show you the difference between a comment and an alias. So and that's all we have to do. Now to actually select that, we have to come over to the left-hand column. You'll see that there's a kind of an editing pin right here, but all we have to do is select it. And now we have selected our first tag address, an actual input with start push button. We're going to go ahead and continue on with the motor seal-in circuit here. So we'll go back over to Micro850, and I'm going to use and we're just going to not worry about the comment right now. So now we have a stop push button. We'll drag the coil down. At this point, we're going to scroll down to the outputs. And so once again, following that same format, IO, embedded, digital out, 0, 0. Come over here. So now we have the beginning rung. I need to add a branch. Branch is over here. We'll drag that down. And a cautionary word about branches. If you don't drop the branch in the correct place on the rung, it is very difficult to reposition the branch. As you can see, much easier just to select it, hit delete, and then go back to the branch and put it in the correct location. Okay, so just a word there. You can work with the branch editor and kind of get used to it, but you know, if you struggle with that, if you drop the branch into the wrong location on the rung, it's really pretty easy just to go ahead and delete it and pull another branch down. So we'll go ahead and add the seal-in circuit portion here. It did not go in the correct place, so we'll drag it in. I can do copy and paste, so I can come over here and make that window active. And come back here. Also, notice if you can see, there's a yellow caution sign that's indicating that this is not complete, or there's a problem with syntax. Obviously, what the problem is here is that we don't have a variable. We don't have a tag name listed. So we've completed our first rung. I'm going to go ahead and add a second rung here.